You don't need to fight to be respected. You just need to stop being available. Not forever. Not to everyone. Just to what drains you. Because somewhere along the line, you were taught that your value lives in your availability. That love means being reachable, helpful, soft-spoken, and always saying yes. That being good means being open, even when you're unraveling inside. And the world? It got comfortable with that, with your instant replies, with your emotional labor, with your predictability. But here's the truth they never told you. Availability isn't kindness, it's currency. And when you hand it out freely, without pause, people stop seeing it as a gift. They start seeing it as a given. You were not born to be emotionally overdrawn. You were not made to be a support system for people who disappear the moment you need support. And every time you silence your no, every time you rush to soothe someone who would never do the same for you, you hand over a piece of yourself, quietly, invisibly, but unmistakably. And then you wonder, why am I so tired? Why do I feel invisible, even in relationships that claim to see me? Because you've made your soul too accessible, and what is always accessible eventually becomes invisible. You don't owe the world your constant yes. Sometimes your greatest act of power is withdrawal. And the moment you stop being available, the moment you stop offering pieces of yourself to be consumed, everything shifts. If this message already speaks to something you felt but couldn't name, take a moment to like the video. It helps more people find this kind of depth. Now breathe. Because this is just the beginning. Let's begin with something Carl Jung understood more clearly than most. The self you show to the world is not the self you truly are. It's a mask, a costume stitched together from approval, fear, and repetition. He called it the persona, the face we wear to be loved, accepted, understood. But over time, we forget it's a mask at all. We wear it too long, and we mistake its comfort for identity. Now here's where it cuts deeper. For many of us, the persona doesn't look like arrogance or pretense. It looks like emotional availability. It's the helper, the always there for you friend, the over-apologizer, the one who texts back in seconds, even when they're falling apart inside. You learned early, maybe even in childhood, that being available bought you safety. That being agreeable earned affection. That being responsive made people stay. But it also made you porous, energetically leaky, psychically exposed. Carl Jung taught that the psyche isn't a boundless ocean, it's a finite system. Your thoughts, your attention, your emotional reactions, they're all expressions of psychic energy. And that energy is not unlimited. Every yes you give out of fear, every explanation you offer just to avoid being misunderstood, every emotional reaction to someone else's dysfunction costs you. The currency of your life is energy, not time, not money, not talent, energy. And when you live in a state of constant reactivity, of high emotional accessibility, you begin hemorrhaging this currency. Quietly, tragically. Because here's what no one told you. The more available you are, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. You become an emotional vending machine. People learn which buttons to push. Guilt, praise, urgency, silence. And like magic, you react. They don't see you. They see their need for you. And they expect you to fulfill it on demand. You know this feeling. That heaviness in your chest when your phone buzzes. The fatigue behind your smile when someone leans on you, again. That echoing sense of being needed but never really known. That's not connection. That's projection. Jung said projection happens when others see in you what they cannot or will not see in themselves. So they cast a role on you. The caretaker, the fixer, the therapist, the good one. And as long as you keep playing that role, they never have to face their own chaos. They just hand it to you. And let's be honest, there was a time that felt good. Being needed felt like being loved. Being available felt like being worthy. But that's the trap, because when your worth is tethered to your availability, you become a function, not a person. What happens when you stop answering? What happens when you take longer to reply? What happens when you say no without explanation? The world doesn't applaud. It panics. Not because you've done something wrong, but because the illusion is breaking. The idea that they could always access you, always lean on you, always extract from you. When you stop reacting, people lose their script. And suddenly, they don't know who you are anymore. Because the only version of you they ever knew was the one who never paused, never questioned, never said not this time. And that's when something powerful happens. You begin to see who was loving you and who was loving their access to you. That's a hard distinction, but it's also the beginning of truth. Because truth begins at the point where the persona ends. When you begin to withdraw, not out of bitterness, but out of sacred necessity, something deep in the psyche stirs, a kind of awakening. You realize that you've been acting in someone else's play for so long, you forgot you had your own script. You've been showing up to stages you didn't audition for, saying lines that kept everyone comfortable, but left you hollow. And maybe, just maybe, you're tired of being a character in other people's narratives. You want to be the author of your own. That longing, that quiet, defiant desire to return to yourself is the spark of individuation. Jung called individuation the process of becoming whole, of reclaiming the disowned parts of ourselves and stepping into the full expression of who we are, not who we were trained to be. But individuation demands something rare in our world. Silence, distance, discomfort. It demands withdrawal, and that withdrawal will be misread. You'll be called selfish, cold, hard to reach, different. Yes, you will be different. Because when you stop giving everyone the same access to you, you stop giving them the power to define you. If you're still here, it means you feel this too. Share your experience in the comments. Let's give voice to what so many stay silent about. This isn't about disappearing. This is about discerning. Because not everyone deserves your emotional immediacy. Not every conversation is worth your energy. Not every request is sacred. Some things require silence, some people require absence, and some parts of you will only be found in solitude. When you stop being available, everything changes. But more importantly, you begin to change. There's a moment, quiet, disorienting, sacred, when you first withdraw. Not as a performance, not as a tactic, but as a soul-deep decision. And it's in that moment, everything begins to unravel. Because withdrawal isn't just about space, it's about truth. You've spent years giving people access to your inner world as if it cost you nothing. You smiled through exhaustion. You answered when you wanted silence. You stayed when your soul was already halfway out the door. And now, as you choose to step back, not out of anger, but out of clarity, what you feel first isn't power. It's guilt. You wonder, am I abandoning people? Am I being too harsh? What if they think I don't care anymore? Let me tell you something vital. You're not feeling guilt. You're feeling withdrawal from a role that was never yours to carry. The persona, the overly available self, has been running the show for so long, its absence feels like betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's liberation. The part of you that has always needed to be liked, understood, included. It's grieving. Because availability was how you secured closeness. You believed your presence was your worth. That saying yes made you safe. Now that you're choosing to say no, something deeper begins to shift. Not only in you, but in the world around you. Because when you withdraw, you break an unspoken contract. The one that said, I'll always be here, even if it hurts me. I'll understand, even when I'm the one bleeding. I'll keep showing up, even if no one shows up for me. You didn't sign that contract on paper. You signed it in behavior. And the moment you stop living by it, people feel it. Not consciously, perhaps, but energetically. They know something changed, and they don't like it. So they push, they test, they provoke. You'll notice it quickly. The same people who once adored your softness will start calling you distant. Those who benefited from your constant support will now say you're being difficult. And those who never once asked how you were doing will suddenly demand explanations. But that's not about you. It never was. It's about their loss of control. Your availability gave them power. Your presence soothed their chaos. Your reactions affirmed their role in your life. Now, without your immediate energy, without your instinct to fix, to justify, to prove, they're left with something unfamiliar, themselves. And that's the real discomfort, not your silence, not your distance, but the reflection your absence forces them to see. You were their mirror. Now, without it, they see their own cracks. This is where psychic sovereignty begins. Sovereignty isn't about walls. It's not about being unreachable, cold, or guarded. It's about being whole within yourself, so you no longer leak energy just to feel valued. It's about no longer trading your presence for peace, Because every time you said yes out of fear, you fragmented. You left a part of yourself behind just to be accepted. Jung taught that reactivity is a window into the unconscious. And every emotional reaction, the need to defend yourself, to please, to explain, is the echo of an old wound, an unhealed place inside you that once believed love was conditional. So when someone questions your boundary and you feel the pull to justify, pause. That pull isn't truth, it's programming. You are not here to keep others comfortable. You are not here to perform emotional service. You are here to become whole. And wholeness requires discomfort, especially in the beginning. Because once you stop reacting, once you stop over-explaining, once you begin practicing sacred unavailability, the nervous system panics. There's a detox that happens when you reclaim your energy. It shows up as loneliness, as doubt, as the urge to reach back out and soothe someone else's unease, just so you don't have to feel your own. But let me offer this. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof that something false is leaving you. You are no longer feeding the illusion that your worth is tied to how quickly you respond, how emotionally generous you are, how easy you make it for others to stay comfortable. And in that empty space, where old reactions used to live, new awareness arises. You start to see who actually respects you and who only respected their ability to access you. You begin to notice who calls you selfish, but only after you stopped serving them. You hear the guilt trips, the emotional drama, the sudden concern, not as care, but as manipulation dressed in soft clothing. And this is not cynicism, it's clarity. Because once you stop participating in the performance, the real dynamics emerge. And it's painful, yes, but it's also clean. This is what Jung meant by individuation. To become yourself, you must separate from the roles others cast you in. You must allow the old identities, caretaker, fixer, responder, to die. And you must endure the grief of letting go of what once felt like connection, but was really just energetic dependency. True connection doesn't require your exhaustion. It doesn't demand your constant yes. It doesn't resent your boundaries. True connection waits, listens, respects your rhythms, meets you where you are, not where you're useful. And as you walk this path, as you continue to pull back from the over-availability that kept you tethered to versions of yourself you've outgrown, you will begin to experience a strange, unfamiliar sensation. Stillness. Not numbness. Not apathy. But stillness. The kind that doesn't chase, doesn't defend, doesn't react. The kind that says, I will not be rushed, I will not be drained, and I do not owe anyone access to my soul. And in that stillness your energy returns. Not all at once, but breath by breath, choice by choice. Every unreturned message, every silence held, every boundary honored, it all becomes a vote for your freedom. You begin to choose you, not to prove anything, not to hurt anyone, but because, for the first time, you realize you are worth choosing, and everything that cannot meet you in that truth must fall away. This is psychic sovereignty, not the power to dominate, but the power to remain, rooted, clear, whole. And then something shifts, subtly, quietly, after the unraveling, after the withdrawal, after the guilt fades and the voices of protest quiet down, you find yourself somewhere unexpected, not broken, not alone, not abandoned, but spacious. There is room now. Room to breathe, room to feel your own heartbeat without someone else's need drowning it out. Room to think thoughts that are yours, not reactions, not accommodations, not defenses. Yours. This is what it means to reclaim inner space. It's not the absence of people, it's the presence of you. It's waking up without an emotional to-do list. It's walking into a room and not scanning for who might need you. It's hearing your phone ring and feeling nothing but peace when you don't answer. You are no longer reacting. You are observing. And in that observation, something sacred emerges. Clarity. You begin to see what you couldn't see before, when you were buried in emotional obligation. You see who always interrupted your silence, but never offered their own. You see which relationships were held together by your overfunctioning. You see how often you were asked to soften, shrink, bend, just to keep the peace. And suddenly, you no longer want peace that costs you yourself. Because silence, once uncomfortable, has become a teacher. It has revealed the texture of your own presence. It has shown you that withdrawal is not retreat. It is return. Return to center. Return to self. Return to sovereignty. And this return? It unnerves people. Because when you stop explaining yourself, they no longer know how to interpret you. When you stop offering your energy freely, they realize they were never entitled to it. When you stop being emotionally available on demand, they must finally confront their own emotional starvation. And that's when the accusations come. You've changed. You're so distant now. You're not the same. Of course you're not. You've stopped abandoning yourself. You've stopped trying to make everyone else comfortable while you quietly collapsed. You've stopped equating love with self-erasure, and you've started protecting what is sacred. Your energy. Because now you understand psychic energy is not infinite. It must be guarded, filtered, directed. Every time you offer a reply to someone who doesn't listen, you dilute it. Every time you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you betray it. Every time you show up for people who drain you, you drain it too. So now you've become selective. Not bitter, not cold, but discerning. And that discernment has gravity. It's why your silence speaks louder now than your words ever did. It's why your no echoes longer than your habitual yes ever could. It's why you now walk into a room and your very presence demands more than your old availability ever offered. Because here's the paradox. When you stop being available to everyone, you become more valuable to the few who truly see you. You are no longer background noise. You are no longer the emotional emergency button people press when they want relief. You are no longer the always there figure who keeps others from facing their own lives. You have become rare, not because you're withholding, but because you are now aligned with something deeper, something Jung called individuation. You are no longer a fragmented persona trying to be liked. You are becoming whole. And wholeness is magnetic. It's why, when you stop chasing, you become the gravitational center. It's why, when you stop reacting, the noise falls away. It's why, when you stop explaining, truth reveals itself. Your boundaries, once feared, are now your compass. They don't push people away. They pull clarity closer. And clarity is power, not the kind that controls others, the kind that centers you. It's why now you're unbothered by being misunderstood. You've learned that the need to be understood was part of the performance. You don't need to be known by everyone, only by yourself. And that self is coming home. You've cleared the emotional clutter. You've turned down the volume of other people's projections. You've walked away from dynamics that only existed because you refused to walk away. And now, finally, you can hear your own voice. Not the anxious one, not the one that performs, but the deep, grounded, ancient voice inside you that says, you are allowed to protect your peace. You are not required to carry what is not yours. You do not owe anyone access to your soul. So what do you do now? You listen. You honor your rhythms. You choose your conversations. You sit in silence, not as absence, but as sovereignty. Because every moment of unavailability to the world is a moment of presence with yourself. This is not withdrawal. This is recalibration. This is the reclamation of your psychic ecosystem. And not everyone will understand it. Not everyone is meant to. Some people only knew you as the version of yourself that kept them safe. Let them go. Let them grieve the access they once had. That is not your burden. Because now, you are no longer fueled by guilt. You are no longer rushing to fix. You are no longer apologizing for your own boundaries. You are present, not everywhere, not to everyone, but where it matters. And presence, when it is real, no longer needs to prove itself. If you've made it this far, something in you is already changing. Let me ask you this. What's one thing, one interaction, one commitment, one habit that no longer deserves your energy? Share it in the comments. Let's name it together. This is the space you've earned. And from here on, it is sacred. In the final part, we'll speak of solitude, not as exile, but as birth. The rebirth of the self, the true self, the one you've been waiting to become. You were not born to be an emotional service center. You were born to be whole, not convenient, not compliant, not chronically available, whole. And wholeness often begins in solitude, not the kind that punishes, but the kind that purifies, not loneliness, clarity. Because when you stop being available, you don't just change how others treat you, you change who you are willing to be. You stop managing people's perceptions. You stop auditioning for love. You stop translating your truth to fit someone else's expectations. You reclaim your self-worth, not from applause, not from access, but from alignment. And here's what most never tell you. Your peace will be misunderstood. Your silence will be misread. Your absence will disturb those who relied on your dysfunction. But none of that is your responsibility. You owe no one your emotional depletion. You owe no one your constant reachability. You owe no one the version of you that existed only to be accepted. From this point forward, you owe only one thing: to stay true to yourself, even if it costs you old roles, old stories, and old connections. Because what you lose in noise, you gain in truth. And what you gain in truth can never be taken. Don't ask who left when you withdrew. Ask who stayed quiet because they never truly saw you. When you stop being available, everything changes. But most importantly, you change. If this stirred something real in you, subscribe. This space is for those done with noise and ready for depth.